I'm Bruce Edwards. I'm the business reporter for the Rutland Herald, and I also did some radio work before I got into newspapers. I was a disc jockey, and I was later on I evolved into a newscaster and hosted a public affairs show. Each station would have its own format. There could be adult contemporary, it could be top 40, country and western, it could be classical, oldies, and we had kind of a top 40 format. And the program director would, from any number of records he'd get in, sample records he'd get in each week, he would select which records he'd want to play, and he'd also look at what the top songs were on the Billboard or the Cashbox top 40 or top 100, and which were the up-and-coming songs, and that would tell you, or that would tell him, what songs should be played the most often. The songs that were just new, they would be played less often. And within a kind of a selection of, depending on how you mark the records, you would have a selection of which records to play in a certain category during the course of the day or during the course of your shift. Now, most air shifts were probably around 4 hours. When I first started, actually I had a split shift. I had a morning shift and I had an evening shift. So that made things kind of interesting. Didn't get a lot of sleep, but it made things interesting. There's a difference between print and radio news. I went from radio news to print. I remember when I was a little nervous about taking the job here at the Rutland Herald, and at the time it was as the City Hall reporter. And I've been doing radio news for several years. But radio news is different because it's a lot more concise. You're splicing in interviews with your own written words, usually in a 30, 40 second, maybe a 1 minute news story on air, as opposed to, you pick up a newspaper and you could spend 5 minutes reading a story. So I was used to brevity. Radio news is brief, it's to the point. Print journalism is also supposed to be to the point, and it is. Good journalists, good reporters write concisely. The fewer words, the better. But the stories in the print are obviously a lot longer. And one of the advantages of newspaper, or magazines for that matter, like Time Magazine or U.S. News and World Report or Newsweek, is that the print media, print journalism, gives you the consumer, the public, the consuming public, a lot more information, a lot more detail, much more information than you can in either radio or television news. And with that information, with that additional information, hopefully, especially in an election year like we're in now, you're more informed and you can make better choices. But certainly there is a difference between radio and print journalism.